Yes, here we are. All right. Welcome to this week's episode of Motor City Metrics. We're down one man tonight, as Rogelio is taking some personal time, but it's me, Chris Brown. Alongside me is Mike Pepchek, and we got Yoop here, and we're talking to you after a mercifully quick Tigers loss, 7-1, I believe it was the final score against the Kansas City Royals.
Yeah, 2 hours, 6 minutes.
Yes, and we'll give you the usual talk about this game and the games recently, but there's larger topics to talk about, and we can kind of revisit some of the trade deadline stuff, revisit some of Scott Harris's comments. We'll do our usual segments and things like that, but the production value won't quite be there because I'm not the prod whiz that Roger is. But guys, welcome. I know that you've both had some interesting days recently, but I'm glad you could make the show.
Happy to be here, ready to roll.
So yeah, I don't know where do we want to. I guess we kick off with today's game, right? Because it was it's the most recent thing.
First comment, hilarious.
Yes.
I mean, it was hard. It was hard to prep for today. During the game, I really tried to be positive, and it was very hard to be positive during the game today.
Well, that was a tough one because 3 batters in, he figured this ain't good. I mean,
Yeah,
unbelievable. Montero, he rallied himself. Let's give him a little bit of credit. He got through the next few innings, but ugly start.
yeah, and in preparing for this, I was like, I wonder if he has like severe first inning issues, and I looked and was like, sometimes in the first, sometimes the third, sometimes the fifth, doesn't really matter. But I do think it is always important to remember that Montero is still a rookie, and he seems to have these hiccups, and it's something that we were prepared for anyway. We've seen it in the minors, and he didn't have a great ERA in Toledo before he came up, but he's a guy who will have these 2, 3, 4, 5 batter spans where things get out of hand on him. And today, honestly, the home run he gave up, the pitch was not all that bad. It was below the zone, but it was still in the middle of the plate below the zone.
Yes,
where you can get in trouble, and particularly to a lefty, right? Like I don't think you have to worry too much about that pitch to a righty, but then basically turns around and fires 7, after giving up 3 runs before recording an out, goes 7 innings of 1-run ball, which of course would have only been enough to tie the game because the Tigers offense is now abject again. Unfortunately, they've I think only scored more than 3 runs in a game twice in the last 8 games. And it's 4 straight losses to division opponents, and we knew, and I think everybody hoped that they would be a little bit more competitive, but when they sold and we expected them to sell, the writing was finally on the wall, and you could also see it a little bit in the people they called up. So I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts about Brendan Hanafy and Sean Gunther.
It's so funny when the Hens came here to Des Moines back in June. I was watching Hanafy, and I was thinking to myself, I'll probably never see him again in the Detroit uniform. And lo and behold, due to the injuries and due to the trades and due to everything else, the attrition of the season, there he is. He's back. And, he's a guy who is going to get these little 5 to 10, 15 innings, cup of coffees, and a couple years from now, he will be gone. But he lives to see another day in the big leagues and give up a few more runs.
I mean, I feel bad for the guy. He's kind of in a terrible situation. He's brought up knowing that, this isn't what people were looking for. But holy crap, COVID is no joke, y'all. I'm brain fogging all over the place. But I wanted to say, Chris, before I moved on any further, I did the exact same thing when I was doing good, bad, and the ugly prep. I was like, man, does he just have a bad first inning? Does he need an opener? And then, oh no, first, third, fifth. Yeah, it's every other inning. I really like, I see, not in necessarily the style of pitchers, but I've kind of felt that way about Beau Brieske too, is he would be shut down just like Montero was. I think I saw he retired 17 of 19 batters after that first inning. So that's incredible. But he gives up enough when he loses it that and maybe it's too early to give up on him. He's a rookie, like Chris said. It's way too early to give up, but it just makes you wonder his long-term viability as a starter, which is terrifying to think about considering he's one of 2 starting pitchers in the rotation right now. He is half of the rotation. And the fact that we don't know if he's a long-term starting option, I feel bad for him because it's not his fault. He was brought up and he's put in an impossible situation. He's a rookie, and his other counterpart is Skubal. So it's just, he's got a magnifying glass on him. It's not fair. But the fact that they called up these 2 guys, I think it spells one thing. It says Maeda's back in the starting rotation out of pure necessity. And that was the number one thing the call-ups said to me.
Yeah, I mean, it to me, it's also, I mean, they're in that period now where they're just calling up people that they don't care about cutting later. Now, there are parts of Hannafy that are interesting. He'll get his fastball up to 97. He's got a decent slider or whatever, but there's a reason he's in the minors for the most part of his entire career and is at this age. And Gunther has been in the majors before too, but and he's been pitching well in Toledo, but there's a reason he wasn't called up before this, and that Joey Wentz was getting trotted out there every third day. They've reached kind of the tipping point where they are just trying to find warm bodies, unfortunately. And sometimes when you do that, you might get lucky and find somebody who something clicks. But yeah, for the most part, I think this is going to be an ugly 52 games. Go ahead, you.
Well, you think back to, wasn't late one summer, was it 2019? I forget the year where they brought in Drew Hutchison. They basically grabbed him off the street, and he had a couple of decent starts and a couple of horrible starts, and they limped their way through the season. I could see a move like that happening yet. Somebody who gets cut loose. I saw Eric Lauer was cut loose by Houston today. If he becomes available to them, I mean, there's a guy who started or pitched in relief in the majors. You could see why they would give him a few starts. A guy of his ilk, someone on that level anyway, is probably what they're going to find to get through the season. But for Montero, like I said, as Mike pointed out, 17 out of 19 batters he retired there after his disaster inning. He is showing just enough where they might as well keep giving him starts as long as he's feeling good and healthy, and see what they can do with him, and see what Chris Fetter can achieve over these next 2 months, guiding him through the rest of the season.
Yeah, and there have been talks about him as starter versus reliever since he was in the minors. And there are people in the organization who think he could be a really lights out bullpen arm. That's obviously not a consideration right now, and it's one of those things. And we can talk about this in regards to Tyron Lorenzo, or you don't force a guy into a less role until you have to. And Montero, I think has shown, he has had a couple very nice starts where you're like, okay, I think this can work. And he just needs to figure out a way to limit those blowups. And maybe he never will. But if he can, then yeah, you got a pretty nice mid-rotation starter there. So there's no reason to stop now, right? This is tryout period for the next 10 weeks.
Exactly. And all he's got to do, he's just got to learn, how do you make that 3-run inning or 1-run inning? I mean, a 4-run inning is only a 2-run inning.
Yep.
There are things pitchers can do to mitigate some of that, and catchers need to help them guide through that too. And the next 2 months will be a whole lot of watching that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I talked about this before we went on, like right before we went on. I was talking up the last time we recorded about how, hey, this is the plan, this is what's going to happen. I'm excited to see these young guys, but now that the time's here, I feel like I repress it a bit, just like how much it sucks going into a baseball game knowing that winning really isn't the number one priority right now. And I'm not saying that changes the way anybody plays, of course. It's just when that takes kind of a back seat, you lose a little bit. The fan in me died a little, I guess, just watching today, knowing that this is what I'm going to have to expect. And again, I think this is the right move, but it's not fun all the time. And a game like today, watching both these guys, Gunther and Hannafy, go out there, and I don't know, like Chris said, like they're not part of the future. They're up because it doesn't matter when they eventually get cut. So it's just, that's not even part of the future. That's past the whole young guys thing, So the roster fillers, that's not fun. That's not even future looks.
And let's not forget the offense, as we noted earlier. they have a very much a 2019 vibe to them right now too, with the guys they're tossing out there. Hopefully, Riley Green comes back and has some baseball left in him that we can watch. Hopefully, Parker Meadows gets brought back this weekend. I know Hinch kind of alluded to it could be this weekend, could be next week. Hopefully, he provides a spark again like he did when he was called up last time and then immediately hurt himself, but he was doing pretty well. Because what are we going to watch these last 2 months? Without Green and without Meadows and without a few other guys, Carpenter and so on, they lack so much power right now. They just can't create any real runs in short order with a walk and a homer. We're basically watching Colt Keith and a bunch of guys, right? So
Yeah.
hopefully they get a couple guys back, make this interesting. Otherwise, it's going to be very 2019-ish for 2 months, which is fine. I always find things to watch that I root for, but, you know, it is what it is.
So I wasn't able to really – I'm trying. I was looking to see if I could figure out, you know, I was looking at the Tigers offense month by month. But then I found out that the Tigers are in the bottom third in average and OBP this year as an offensive team, but they're 14th or 13th in runs scored. So I think that that's a really interesting correlation, because that's kind of dangerous. If your offensive numbers and your on-base percentages are that low, it just seems like there's a little bit of luck involved with the bursts of offense. And again, I wasn't able to I spent way too long trying to find some good in this that I wasted so much time today trying to prep for that. But I think if we dig deeper into those kinds of numbers, this offense kind of looks, I don't know. It's not something that's sustainable because the numbers aren't there to support it, I guess, is the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I know. And I wonder if part of that is having a couple of giant anchors in the lineup, you know, every other day. It's where it becomes more of a cluster luck thing where, you know, if you've got McKinstry and Baez and Rogers and you know, those guys batting in the lineup, they're going to drag down the whole of the offense in general. But if you have, you know, a top four that's Perez and Green and Keith and I don't know, Malloy or whatever, that you might be scoring more runs than you expect. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of with you guys where it's a real bummer. But I am, to Youp's point, like, yeah, Meadows should be back soon and Green should be back soon. And then you've got a lineup, like, it might not be good, but at least you've got like 2/3 of it as young and guys who could theoretically be part of the future, right? So, you know, Green, Perez, Keith, Malloy, Dingler, Meadows, you know, you're still going to have to put Vierling and Urshela and Baez in there and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think there's a little bit of hope there, but again, yeah, it's going to be inconsistent and it's going to be tough to watch, particularly when you've got two starting pitchers. I will say, you know, I think they talked today a little bit, and of course they called up the two relievers. There's still one spot on the 40-man roster. I think you mentioned, you know, they may claim somebody. We've seen Adrian Hauser was released by the Mets. Cole Irvin, I believe, was released by the Orioles. These are veteran big league pitchers who could eat some innings, but I think Brant Herter was scheduled to start for Toledo tonight and then was scratched, and they started Andrew Vasquez instead. They have not announced a starter for Saturday. I was assuming it would be Brian Sammons again because I think that's 5 days since the last time he pitched. But it could theoretically be Herter with maybe Maeda as a backup. You know, it just, you know, it bums me out. Like I would like for them to go ahead and push Scooble's start back to Saturday. Because Saturday is, I believe, the Jim Leland retirement ceremony game.
Oh, yeah.
Which will be one of the few enjoyable days probably at Comerica for the rest of the season. So make it a Scooble day. Give Scooble an extra day off. Do whatever you want to tomorrow. You know, pitch McKinstry. I mean, you can't anymore until you're down by 8 or 10 runs or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It would be nice to have, but maybe, you know, maybe Jim Leland will be able to rile up the troops one last time and they'll go out there and put up a fight. You know, the Royals are good, and they're actually are my good this week, but you know, they're not a juggernaut that the Tigers can't go out there and beat. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they work this rotation over the next couple of months, because yeah, this is one of the more kind of complex tape jobs I've seen.
Yeah, it's even weirder when I think I mean, the last comparable thing is when the Rays kind of started doing the opener thing back, like really consistently. It's interesting. You put it perfectly. It's interesting. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be great. There's going to be a lot of bumps, but I don't love the way that AJ Hinch uses his bullpen, as I've voiced very, very adamantly throughout this show. So I just think that it's just putting more pressure on him. So whether I like the way he does it or not, you're asking AJ Hinch to do a really difficult job. And I don't know. Fun is just not something that we're going to think of a lot the rest of the year. I'm sorry for beating the dead horse. As I've said many times, I said this on Tuesday, I am up and down with this team. When they win, I am pumped. And when they lose, I am bummed, very bummed. And it shows when we record. What I wanted to bring up though is it's kind of alarming to look at it when all we hear about, we know the farm system is good, but look at what happens when you need guys right now. It just shows you, again, it kind of emphasizes they're a little bit farther away when they don't have guys ready right now. And it sucks. It's like, to a fan, when you're like, well, our farm system's supposed to be so good. Well, yeah, because it's got a bunch of young guys, so it's demoralizing to look at it from that standpoint too, that there's nothing ready right now.
Yeah. And again, one of the guys who was supposed to be a part of that hit a home run for Toledo tonight. He's been hitting well for Toledo the last couple of days. I didn't see the velocity on tonight's home run pitch, but the last few were no good. I don't know. It's I don't know. Maybe it's time to revisit some of Scott Harris's comments this morning. Maybe see if that has changed our perspective on the trade deadline at all. I think we talked about this. Rogelio, I believe, listened to Scott Harris on 97 this one or 97.1 this morning, and I didn't hear it, and I haven't seen the actual interview, but he did get some points out here. And you guys stop me whenever there's something that you'd like to talk about.
Okay.
Because so the first thing is confirms that they were never close to trading Tarek Skubal. I don't think that's. I think that's the truth. I don't think. I'm sure people asked, and they probably said, "Yeah, no thanks." But
I would say you're probably right, but I would also say he wouldn't admit it if they were close.
Yeah.
I don't think they would.
So that's 99% of all this. No matter what he says, he's not going to come out and say, "Yeah, we got screwed. The guys we wanted, we couldn't get. We had to take this lousy deal." He would, okay. Obviously, never going to say that.
They always get every player they want, exactly the player they wanted.
So yeah, no, these are guys that are very talented. We like them. Yeah. But yeah, and so he says that spending money doesn't automatically make you a winner. Now this is I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that.
We talked about it a couple weeks ago. It's a huge thing. It was when everybody was flaming the Tigers manager or Scott Harris for not making additional signings when they were going on that streak. This was the only thing he said today that I actually agreed with him. And maybe it's not so simple. I understand that fans don't love the fact that every year the payroll's trimming. That's a fact. So I understand that, but I just don't understand what even two bats added to this lineup. I don't think they're still going to be barely battling for a wild card at that point. So the fact that that's what people wanted, I think it was alluding to that more so than where they're at right now. I don't know.
Well, you look at, you can find teams who spent a lot of money and tanked, right? We know that. Those examples are out there. But those tend to be the things that get way too much attention, in my opinion, because there are just as many teams and there are more teams. If you look at the Final Four every year in baseball in the league championship series, usually 3 of them are in the top 10 in salary. Okay, they just are.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
There is some correlation to winning and spending. It's not perfect, and you need to develop, and you need to make good trades. And it's not just signing every free agent willy-nilly. But they need to be targeted, and this year they targeted a couple of guys. Flaherty worked out great. Maeda did not. Canna was so-so, and Chafin was okay. At times, real good. So I didn't like hearing him say it's kind of allude to the fact that you can see the writings on the wall. They're not going to go into premium free agency this year, and that's fine. But I hate being. It just seems so defeatist to me to know early on that they're probably, unless they really make a splash out of nowhere, that they've written it off for this winter.
Yeah, there was the question about free agent spending, and he kind of gave the very glib, it's July, we're still trying to win. And it's like, again, if you're a GM or a president, you should be planning for next year, the year after, all that stuff. But at the same time, you can't really say it. You might be able to say it in a, a better way. But again, I don't know if Scott Harris has the media training.
Wow.
He's not particularly smooth at these sorts of things.
All he has to say, I mean, yeah, it is GM speak, what I'm about to say, but at least it's better than, well, it's July.
Yeah.
All I can say is, we are going to pursue all opportunities to improve our ball club.
Yeah.
And that doesn't say anything, but it also doesn't say nothing.
Yeah, I agree. And that's, it's just not, I don't know. There's an air of Scott Harris about, like, when people ask him questions where he kind of feels almost offended that they would ask something like that, like he hasn't thought about it. Like, it's not a great bedside manner, if you will.
It feels similar to me with like the Bob Quinn, Matt Patricia era. And I'm not saying that they're comparable, but like he kind of gives off that I'm smarter than you, I'm the smartest guy in the room kind of vibes.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that he's young and he's trying to prove himself. Like, there is a bit of a chip on your shoulder kind of mentality to it, but at the same time, I get that vibe from him every time he speaks. Just like you said, like, of course I thought of that. I'm the GM. Yeah, absolutely. And I have a plan in play. And it's just, I don't know, when even casual fans can see like some, maybe that's not fair to say, but when we see things that are, they're objectively things that well, that's not right. Oh my goodness. I can't talk today.
No, it's all good.
You can criticize him without really looking too hard. And I don't like that he's just ignoring that.
I think Ray actually hits it on the nail on the head here.
Yeah.
He says it's Brad Osmussian.
I like it.
And I always thought that a lot of the criticism of Brad Osmus was overblown, but it was a lot of the way that he responded to questions and things like that, where it just felt like he was very smug. And I don't know, we don't see Scott Harris enough, and I'm sure he probably slept about 15 minutes over the last week. In addition to trade deadlines and the draft, he also has like a brand new baby, so maybe he's not 100% fresh. But so far, like, the public appearances haven't been great, and I don't know. But we'll continue with some of his comments. He did remind us that the young players are currently getting better in the majors. Colt Keith is very obviously continuing to hit and looks good. We've seen ups and downs from Malloy and Perez. It was fun. It's been fun to see Dingler come up. He's got 2 games under his belt, or 3 games now, so it's hard to say anything. But some of the young players are getting better. But you see the stretches and the as we talked with Montero, it's not always going to be smooth. What else do we have here? Doesn't know if Spencer Torkelson will be back in the majors this year.
Well, on that one, when he was sent down, one of my, and I really want Torkelson to succeed. We all do, but I've been watching him very closely. I really root for the guy, but even I was of the mindset that if he goes down in June, he needs to stay there until he's made substantive changes in his approach and worked on what the club wants. And then, and only then, he should come back. Now, he's on this little hot streak right now. He had he had kind of a quiet spell there for a while in AAA. But now, the last 10 days, he's been hitting the ball real well. Now, I don't know if the Louisville Bats have any pitching worth a damn. Okay,
no,
so, but at the same time, if they suck, then you should hit, and he has hit, so that's good. And he had a big night tonight. I guess it comes down to this: do you want to reward him by bringing him back and just seeing what he can do for these last 8 weeks, or do you need to keep the screws on him a little bit to keep working and show us more, and then and only then you'll be back with us? So hard to say. I can see Bone either way with where this team is. playing him over Gio Urshela at first base makes some sense to me, just to see what he can do long term. But I guess in the end, I lean toward keeping him in Toledo and making him work. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Hey, Mike.
Chris.
No, you go.
I mean, I'm just gonna echo. I don't actually think. I think that his season in the majors should be done. I think that he needs to build on something and maybe just come into camp next year with a clear head. But like Chris said too, actually, I don't even remember which one you said it, but it was a great point. Unless you make some sort of actual clear change, then there's nothing that tells the organization that things are going to be any different. And because we've already punted on the season, I don't think it really hurts or helps regardless if he comes up. I just think he needs consistency, and he's not going to find that up on the major league roster. At least he's going to play every day in Toledo, and sometimes that's the best thing for him.
Yeah, I'm torn a little bit. I tend to agree with you that he needs to stay down there until something changes, but I wonder what gets that point across better. Coming up and struggling for the final 50 games in the big leagues, or just being stuck riding the bus in AAA. Like I don't know really. I mean, you would think both of them would do it, but and it may just be that there's nothing he can do until the offseason. So whatever is simplest, and Bly Madris gives us a better chance to win right now, which is an unfortunate saying for anybody. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Torkelson's going to be. Yeah, and Torkelson's going to be a topic of conversation until he is no longer in the organization, or until he figures something out and becomes the guy that everybody hoped he would be. But one of those is becoming increasingly likely, and it's not the latter. More Scott Harris comments. He said, quote, "We can both add bats while developing core, but have to do it smart." Says having a DH would have limited Colt Keith, Jay Henn, and Kerry Carpenter this year. So if they had gone out and signed JD Martinez, that would have limited the opportunities for Keith and Malloy and Carpenter.
Even if you don't like it, he said that before the season started. Like when everybody was on him for not doing that, he said that right away. I don't know. I feel like people's expectations for this year were blown out of proportion because of how well they finished last year.
I'm always going to say this. Don't tell me having better players is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm never going to buy it. I mean, I know we can't afford it. Well, I almost said a bad thing. I was going to say we can't afford Juan Soto. Yes, they can afford Juan Soto, by the way. They just don't. They choose not. They choose not to afford Juan Soto. Okay, but they could have added players this year. It would not have been a stretch for them financially. Having more good players makes those other players work their asses off for at bat. Okay. So don't tell me having too many good players, it would have really kept us down. Bullshit. No way. Get good players. If a good player is available, wants to sign with you, bring that player aboard if he fits in somewhere on your roster.
Yeah. So, I mean, my a couple things on that. We don't know. This is always you never know if JD Martinez would have even wanted to sign here, right? So
exactly right.
I mean, he's the name. Now money talks. And if they had given him the best offer, maybe he would have. It's not like the Mets were, World Series bound. But the other thing about that is that, you could have signed him instead of trading for Mark Canha. You don't have the defensive versatility that Canha gave you, and also, they did, win about 3 months without giving Malloy any bats anyway, right? Like they were, and that was with Carpenter hurt. Like they're like, well, so I don't know. I think, I think that's kind of goes in the category of whatever. Also said that Jace Young mentioned Jace Young and that he may be better than the options that are on the free agent market next year.
Said that in the middle of a Jace Young slump, but that's okay.
Yeah, if they believe in Jace Young, I've said many times from watching him that I don't believe he's a third baseman now or in the future. Now we've discussed you could move Colt Keith to first base, move Jace to second, and then there you go. You still have an issue with no third baseman really, and there are there's one big third baseman on the market. Although I think we've talked before that he's not having a very good season, so that's a little bit scary. But I don't know. I mean, that's whatever. He said he's not going to give up the plan right now anyway. Let's see. They haven't talked about buying out Baez's contract at all internally. I find that very hard to believe. But again,
I think they know exactly when they're willing to do it. I think they know it down to the day exactly when they're willing to cut Javi. He's just never gonna tell that information.
yeah,
I completely agree. That's bull crap.
yeah. There's absolutely zero way that they haven't been like, oh boy, what are we gonna do? He said he makes jokes about fans wanting to spend money, but then in the same breath, people are wanting them to buy out the Baez's contract. That's okay. Like I get what he's saying there, but that's not a thing you say.
No,
We've said that before. Like everybody wants
not
to
a
spend
winning
money.
argument.
Yeah, just spend more money, right? It's not. There's no salary cap. And then finally, he said excited for catcher, first baseman Tyrone Lorenzo because he nukes balls. Advanced game called behind the plate. So I don't know if you guys have any more thoughts on Lorenzo.
Have we heard that it's officially Tyrone?
I went back and I would point people to the Tigers minor league report YouTube page where we posted a week's worth of at bats for Lorenzo against the Whitecaps earlier this year, and also a couple at bats from the Futures game. So you can see, and the announcers consistently call him Tyrone.
Okay.
Basically, I don't know if it's Tyron or Tyrone, but now you've got a Badu and a Tyrone in the system, which maybe two people care about that. But yeah. So I've I don't know if we want to use this opportunity now to kind of go back and everybody discussed the trade deadline, the day of the trade deadline, but I don't know if anybody's had any changing thoughts on it.
I'm still relatively okay with everything. Again, my expectations, once it was readily apparent Skubal wasn't moving, which would have been the one game-changing talent that they have for the organization on the market, they weren't going to do game busters, but I think they made some decent little moves. Montalvo looks like a decent pitcher. Lorenzo, they need power in the organization. If he has it, that's great. I mean, I'm in. Switch hitting catcher, what the heck? So I thought they did okay. I thought it was a good week.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest takeaway is after everything I'm seeing, I just don't think that he's a catcher just based on everything that I've read and everything I've seen. So I don't like that. That's the way it seems like they're trying to present. He's trying to present him as like, oh, we got a good catcher. Well, you got a catcher now. It's probably a first baseman. I mean, but the power's great, sure. And maybe he's one of the best players, best prospects to get traded on the trade deadline. But I think it just goes back to Scott Harris was playing the whole I'm smarter than you. This is exactly the player I wanted. So, of course, he's going to be great. So that's what that comment said to me overall. It just further cemented that when I heard that.
Yeah, I've gone through and we put up video of not just Lorenzo, but also Montalvo, video of Trey Sweeney, and video of Eric Silva, who actually I like too. The reliever they got from Mark Canha. It wouldn't stun me if he ends up being like the best player they acquired, just because how things work out. He's already in Double A. He's only 21. He's got it's a pretty good fastball, even though it's like 93 to 95, and two good breaking balls. He looks like a pretty solid reliever, but I liked a lot of what I saw from Montalvo. He if you give that guy a little bit more velo, I think you're really cooking, because he's a very good athlete. He has great feel to spin the ball. He's got a pretty good slider, and he'll show you a pretty damn good changeup. He didn't he threw a handful of them in the one start I watched, and most of them weren't great, but every now and then there was like a really good one. I was like, okay, maybe you can build on that. And so there's stuff to like there. I ended up I kind of if you'll allow me to make a labored metaphor, and maybe the easiest metaphor to make here is something. This is right along the lines of what Youp has talked before, but we have to remember that they kind of did a damn fine job signing Flaherty in the first place, right? Like nobody I think expected him to be this good to be the best trade chip on the market. We've talked about it a bunch as the season went along, but when they signed him, everybody's like, I don't know, man, this guy, he hasn't been good in 4 years. It's 14 million. So, the baseball metaphor here is that, they loaded the bases with nobody out, and then they, got a sac fly and a double play. And so they scored 1 run, which is fine, but it still feels disappointing given the circumstances. And the labored golf metaphor I will make, and I'm not a big golfer, but this actually happened to me once, so I could use it. The Tigers absolutely crushed their tee shot, right? They hit the tee shot 330 yards. It rolled onto the green. It's still like a 90-foot putt, but you've got a putt for eagle. And the safe thing is to just kind of like lag it up there, right? Give yourself a nice chance at a birdie. But Scott Harris was like, I'm going for this. And so the asking price is super high, and boom, they knock it 15 feet past the hole. and so now you've got a real tough birdie putt, and they had it, and then it lipped out. And that is the Yankees trade that fell through, right? Presumably that was a deal that they liked more. And we heard about that the Yankees backed out because they were worried about Flaherty's injuries. Who knows the truth there, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if they had a deal they liked more that they couldn't get. And so then they end up with a par, which is you can't be mad about a par, right? A par is a solid outcome, especially for somebody as bad at golf as me. But it still feels disappointing because they were on the green and won. It's a 3-putt. It's a bummer. So that's my labored golf metaphor.
I like it. That's a good one.
So anyway, so I don't know if there's anything much more to talk about that. I guess they do have 52 games remaining. Do we want to take a stab at guessing how many of those they will win? They're 3 more with Kansas City, then they're off to Seattle and San Francisco, and then back to face Seattle again.
Yesterday, I put out a tweet and it got a really nice reaction. It got about 500 votes. I asked, with 53 games to go, now they've lost 1, so there you go. I put the over-under on wins at 21.5 with 53 to go. I'll tell you what, the under came in with 70% of the vote. Now, maybe that's because Twitter tends to be negative. Okay, that could be it. So if Vegas tries to always get 50% of the action on both sides of the line, I messed up. Okay, I was too high with 21.5. Mm-hmm. Seeing what we've seen this week and what they've lost and who they're bringing in, with 52 games to go now, I could see 16-36.
That's 94 losses.
That's with Skubal starts. That's with a couple, maybe a 5-game streak where they win 4 because the offense got a little bit hot. But if Riley Green is fragile the rest of the year and Parker Meadows doesn't light a fire when he comes back, I don't know how they're going to score runs, and judging who they have in the bullpen. And so I don't know how they're going to keep runs off the board.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm just more worried about their pitching now, which is crazy to think about because in May, you didn't think there was a chance in hell you'd be worrying about their pitching. At least that's how I felt. So I don't know. I did a lot of looking at their offense, and they are just so up and down. They've been bottom 3 2 months this year, but also the top half in the other 2 months of the year. But I was in the under on that. I voted for that. I just think it's crazy when you put that way, though. That would be 96 losses, 94 losses, with them losing 36 more games.
And then we're in the lottery for Ethan Holiday. That's all I'm going to be talking about.
Well, you're jumping ahead of my inside the numbers here. No, it's all good. I will. I am a kind of a believer, despite what we've seen from the White Sox this year. I've always kind of ascribed to the belief that you play 162 games, whatever, you're going to win a quarter of them and lose a quarter of them, no matter what. Doesn't matter how bad your team is, how good your team. It's baseball. Strange things happen. So they got 52 games left. A quarter of that is 13. So I think they've got 13 wins for sure. Okay. And I think they can win another 7. If I think Green will come back, I think Meadows will come back. Who knows? Like Reese Olson said, he plans to come back this year. Who knows if they'll hold him out? Like there's no real benefit to going out there and winning now, other than maybe you want Olsen to come back and just prove he's healthy. Mize theoretically comes back. Maybe they bring up a couple of the other young pitchers. I don't know. I think 20 wins is reasonable. 20 and 32, which would make them 72, right? 72 wins total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
72 and
Which is
90.
still significantly lower than I thought they would win 84. Things have gone bad. But I think 72 and 90 is possible.
Fair enough.
Yeah, actually, I kind of agree.
So we all would have went the under on my tweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's entirely possible that they were winning games recently without much talent too. It's baseball. They might come together and surprise us, but it's got to be tough to be playing out 2 months knowing that you're kind of playing for nothing. Now, if you have enough young guys, they're playing for their future, then maybe there'll be more fun there. But I don't know. We'll see.
Some people are counting on all the Skubal starts as wins, but he could pitch 7 innings, give up 2 runs, and leave the game down 2-0. I mean,
Yeah,
with this
it's happened.
offense. So I don't think the Skubal starts are gimmies by any stretch.
Well, yeah, maybe he'll take Reese Olson's spot where they just won't score any runs for him the rest of the year.
Well, I think everybody's going to be taking that spot, unfortunately. So, all right, with I think we've discussed this. This team in general. Let's go ahead and move into our segments now. If we'll start with inside the numbers and pretend like you're hearing fun music. All right, sounds good. Yeah, we'll go. We'll start with you, Mike. What's your inside the number?
I got the number 12.
All right.
In the month of July, Colt Keith was the 12th most valuable offensive player in baseball. This was by like almost every metric. He was 12th or 11th. It was weirdly consistent. But WRC plus, WAR, and weighted on base average, he was 12th for all of them for the month of July. Number 1 in a lot of those categories was some guy we saw today, Bobby Witt Jr., who I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But I gave Colt Keith crap in the first month of the year. He had a WRC plus of 16, I think, after his first month, 19. It was like historically bad. Well, then he goes and rips off 190 for the month of July. I know we talk about him a lot. He's going to be the only offensive guy that we're hopefully. I mean, God, I'm knocking on every piece of wood I have around me. As long as he stays healthy, it's going to be great to watch him and see what he can do, because I mean, being 12th in the league in anything, let alone in a lot of offensive categories, it's really cool. And going into this year, you thought Riley Green was maybe the only guy capable of pulling something like that off in any given month this year, unless you're me and you're obsessed with Kerry Carpenter. But I was never sure on Colt Keith because I was not smart and didn't listen to smarter people than me like Chris and Roger. But the core with Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, and Colt Keith, it doesn't seem like so far-fetched right now. It seems realistic. It seems like I literally put it's real life in my notes. Like it was a fantasy a little bit, in the beginning of the year, like what could happen. And it sucks that Torque's not included in that. But I'm just basing on those 3. If we can get those 3 healthy coming into next year, I think that I'm sadly looking forward to their offensive roots more than their pitching roots right now, which I, again, cannot believe I'm thinking that after the way they started off at the beginning of the year. So that is my by the numbers.
Yeah, I like it. I hadn't even looked at his July numbers. I meant to, but 190 WRC plus, that's pretty good. It's a 340 BABIP on a 322 batting average. So it's not like it's a big, huge fake number. I don't think he's a 320 ISO hitter.
Yeah.
I don't think he's gonna hit for that much power. That's like a 40 home run pace, but you know what? Yeah, that was a hell of a month, and yeah, good to see for sure. So I like that. Yoop, what's your inside the number?
I'm going to go real quick on Colt Keith.
All
You
right.
know who he's starting to remind me of? And don't hold me to this. And I maybe call it so-and-so light here. Light. Put light on the bottom. I think little Bryce Harper in my mind. I know that's a lot to put on a guy, but I see that. That's just, boy, that home run swing, when he unleashes that home run swing, I see some Harper in my mind.
Well, he certainly is. Some of the home runs we've seen, it's like, that the one against the lefty, the first one against the left-handed pitcher, he laid off a pitch right down the middle
Mhm.
on 3-1, and then hit the pitch that was like a ball's width inside over the fence. And it was like, he was looking for something specific that he could really unload on. And I think that's what we're seeing now is he's more confident and has a better feel for what he can do and what he should wait for, and what and there's still ups and downs. You get him with change up
Yep.
below the zone, and you see it with Riley Green too. But yeah, I don't know. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a bright spot in an otherwise bummer of a season.
I agree. Okay, my number. I have a little string of numbers here.
All right.
0, 40, 1, and 0. Those are the number of games post All-Star break that Mike Trout has played in each of the last 4 seasons. 0 games in 21, 40 in 22, 1 in 23, and it will be none this year because he's out again. What a shame. One of the brightest lights in baseball, a reason I stayed up in those early years of Mike Trout many a night when I couldn't sleep. I'd flip on the Angels, just to watch some late night baseball and watch Mike Trout do his thing. So fun to watch. And to see his career kind of curtail, mostly due to injuries. And it's happened to others before, but it's a shame to see now.
Yeah, I mean, that's again, that's going to be one of my segments, unfortunately.
That's going to be one of mine too.
Well,
I definitely put it in there.
It's it makes sense. Like it's one of the big bummers of baseball in the last decade, really. But my inside of the number is another thing that you touched on. It's 6, and that is where the Tigers would pick in next year's draft if the season ended today.
Yes.
Now, of course, there is. This is what we got to do. This is all we have left, people. But obviously the lottery changes that. They could go down or up a few places. But it is interesting, they don't have the 6th worst record in baseball, but the A's and White Sox cannot pick in the top 10 despite their horribleness because of the new rules about picking in the top 10 consecutive years for big market teams. So that is a bummer. But so yeah, right now I haven't checked to see. They are tied with the Cubs and they have the tiebreaker. Oh, and the Cubs will be moving back ahead of them because they're losing 4-2 to the Cardinals. Who knows? Maybe they'll pull that out. But yeah, so you're looking at this right now, and they're 12.5 games behind the Rockies for the worst record in baseball. They're not going to catch that. At least the worst record among teams that can draft first overall. And 9 games behind the Marlins. That's not doable. But they're only 4 games out of the third pick, which is the Angels. They've only 4 games to make up here. So I don't know. Winning 20 games probably isn't going to get it done. 72 wins probably won't get you there. But if things fall apart, yeah, you could be looking at another top 5 pick in what is considered a better draft than this year. You hate
Ethan
to think
Holiday,
about this.
baby.
You got Ethan Holiday. You got several other good players there, and you have and they should have a second or the competitive balance round A pick next year. They had the B this year. They should have the A. So that's another pick in the 35 to 40 range, like they got with McGonigal. So you're gonna have more money, and there's gonna be more fun. But yeah, that's what we've got. That's what we have. So anyway, let's go ahead and do our good, bad, and ugly, and we'll start with you, Yoop.
Well, I have a feeling I'm stepping all over you guys here again.
That's just fine.
I had Bobby Witt down.
Mm-hmm.
Dude hit 489 in July. I have all the stats here, but I'm sure you guys have the stats too. I mean, 1 hitless game in July. Okay. People talk about the Royals, how they've come back from 56 and 106, and they spent some money this year. And there's no question they did that. They upgraded in a lot of places, and that's to their credit. But none of that matters. And make this level of turnaround if Bobby Witt Jr. hadn't continued ascending to becoming probably the 2nd or 3rd best player in the game of baseball right now. I mean, he's right there with Shohei. I mean, especially when Ohtani's not pitching at the moment. So he might be the best player when you consider that. So that having the best player in the game manning your shortstop position and playing like it on a daily basis and on a historic run through the month of July, the fourth best batting average of a single calendar month since 1931. Really a hell of a thing. I was a big follower of Bobby Witt Jr. when he was in high school. I was just so hopeful the Tigers would be able to get him. But the Royals and a couple other teams just outsucked the Tigers that year. And they ended up with Riley Green, which isn't bad, but it ain't Bobby Witt.
Yeah, that's yeah. I have mine's a little bit more about the Royals, but also have some Bobby Witt stuff in there. But yeah, he's pretty damn good.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. Good bad.
No, it's so good.
My bad. Casey Mize. So obviously they've had a couple. The way they've, I hesitate to use the word treated him because he's a player. He gets what he gets, and they have to make decisions that they think are best. But when they kind of held him up on $25,000 this year in arbitration, made a deal out of that. Even any kind of public discussion of that was just so petty. And then now with him saying publicly, yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to be ready to go. And now I have to wait extra to get out on the field. Hard to say where that's going. Even if he were to come back and I guess if he comes back and pitch as well, everything takes care of itself. They'll put him out there next year. But where is his career going? Where is his relationship with the Tigers? It's just not a great look right now. Especially, I didn't quite understand. Maybe you guys can fill me in here. They needed the roster spot, okay, but you got Mason Englert on the roster, right? I mean, my God.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So they don't ever put. This is one of the stupid things that they do in it's all about service time. To put somebody on the 60-day IL who's on your 40-man, you have to call them up and then do it. So then they get big league service time. So that's why they haven't done that with Lang or Englert or whomever else is there in AAA. So yeah, it's roster manipulation. It's bean counting. It's all the Ivy League kind of McKinsey nonsense that modern front offices pull.
There you go. Okay, good, the bad, and there's been so much bad for the team. I went with the good, the bad, and the kind of fun today. And I'm stepping away, but I can actually tie this to the Tigers a little bit. I am way, 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 way late to the game here watching Ted Lasso.
Oh,
I don't know if you guys have watched Ted Lasso.
I have.
I'm enjoying the hell out of it. It is an uplifting show. It is funny. There's so many good characters. Sudeikis is a fantastic actor in this. He's perfect. The SNL timing that he has for that role is great. The dude who plays Roy Kent kills me. Roy Kent is my favorite character, bar none, on that show. I love it.
Oi.
Oi. The grunts. It's just very fun. If you haven't watched it, watch it. My gosh, just find a way to get on Apple Plus and watch that series. But when you think about it, we were talking about how Scott Harris comes across so haughty and arrogant. Think if he had just a little smidge of Ted Lasso to him, be a little self-deprecating. You think Scott Harris has ever deprecated himself? I'm thinking he probably hasn't. Let's find a example of that. I doubt it. So Scott Harris could just channel a little bit of his inner Ted Lasso. I think that would do his public appearances a hell of a lot of good. And Chris Ilitch could also become a little bit more like Rebecca too, probably. So he's more like the Rupert guy.
How far into it are you? Have you watched the whole thing?
I am. I think on episode 2 of season 3.
Gotcha. So yeah, I finally watched that. I think last year, maybe earlier this year, and I felt the same way you did. I eventually, by the 3rd season, I felt like some of the episodes were too long.
Each year they've gotten longer.
Yeah, but I ended up enjoying the show quite a bit. But I will tell you this, Roy Kent, the guy who plays Roy Kent, his name is Brett Goldstein. And he's a comedian or whatever, and he co-created another show called Shrinking, which I absolutely love. Is one of my favorite shows I've ever seen.
Really?
It's the best comedy that's come out in decades. It was incredible. It's so good. You're so right, Chris.
It's Jason Segel and Harrison Ford is in it, and Jessica Williams, I think her name is, and it's it's got a little bit of the like the heart and the hope of Ted
Mhm.
Lasso, but it's just, I think, sharper and funnier, and it's shorter. It's quicker. But yeah, and it's one of those shows that I liked it so much that I almost don't want them to make another season because I thought they wrapped it up so perfectly.
Wow.
Um,
What's it
but
on?
it's on Apple
Apple.
TV. It's
Oh,
at
okay.
Apple TV.
Apple
It's
makes great original content. They're really underrated.
but yeah, I can't recommend that show enough. Everybody I've told to watch it has loved it too, and I mean, I've
right.
watched it all the way through twice. I would happily do it again because it's just really good.
Cool.
So yeah, and that was your last
Yeah,
segment
kinda
there.
fun.
Yes. Yes.
All right, Mike, what do you have?
I mean, I can just run through mine because we've already talked about basically all of them. I do want to give the Florida Complex League Tigers their due. They did win the FCL championship on Monday, I believe.
Mhm.
So that was cool. Behind a super high-powered offense, they won 12-1 in the final game. This guy's, real far off, if ever coming here. But it's kind of cool to see that the 18 and 19-year-olds got some pop in their bat, right?
Yeah.
I gotta admit, it took me the entirety of that game. I had done all my prep before the game started. It took me the entirety of that game to think of something to put in that good spot because I'd already put Colt Keith in that by the numbers. So, and so I don't have much to say otherwise.
No.
But
it was that was I've talked about it in the other show, I think, but yeah, they beat the Marlins. We talked before that they had to get into the playoffs. They had to get lucky with the weather.
the rain
out.
delay.
Yeah. And then their first game against the Pirates, they were down 3-1 and had a 3-hour rain delay, and then came back and scored 3 runs out of the rain delay to win game 1. And then game 2, they just blew them out, and they were led by Franyerber Montilla, who has kind of cooled off in the second half, but he had a monster game. I think 2 walks and 3 hits, a double, which is good to see, right? And I'm sure it's an awesome moment for those kids, playing in 1,000 degrees, and anytime you win a title, it's pretty fun. So that's a good.
My bad was Bobby Witt Jr., and it's from this angle. Tigers have been playing him 13 games a year for how long? Casey's never going to let him go. He's going to be here 12, 13, 14 more years. Like, that's not going away at all, ever. And it'll be fun. I love seeing good baseball talent. Just seeing it on Kansas City Royals, of all teams, just that's my bad. I'm not looking forward to it at all, dealing with it. And at least I'm happy it's only 13 games a year now instead of 19. That's the one positive. That is the one positive. And I saw another stat today. He's batting over like 319 over against all types of pitches. Month of July, like against off speed, breaking balls, and fastballs. He's hitting, I think fastballs, it was like 400. And then breaking and off speed, they were both above 319. Absolutely insane. He's a Royal. He's a Royal. I want to swear, but I'm trying to stay calm. I'm upset about it. And then just the ugly was Mike Trout. I had just some more dumb stats, but dude's 32. He hasn't played more than 100 games since 2019. He's one of the biggest what if stories in sports in recent memory. What could have happened if he's played in one playoff series? I know everybody knows that, but it's 10 years ago. I didn't realize it was 10 years ago.
Yeah,
2014 against the Kansas City Royals. It sucks. I loved Mike Trout. I was just like you. I when I was younger, 10 years ago, 1 a.m, unable to sleep, I'm watching Mike Trout hit bombs in the 8th and 9th inning in LA. And it's just a huge bummer. I've said that that might as well be the name of the show today. What a bummer, because there's just so much. That's how I feel about baseball. And I didn't realize that's outside of the Colt Keith. I feel like everything is just what a bummer. Even the Florida Complex League. It's like, yeah, those guys are in the farm system. They're 17, 18, 19 though. So that's a bit of a bummer. So that's what I got.
Yeah, well, I think it's funny. We're all pretty similar here. I like I said, my good was the Royals, and a lot of it does have to do with Bobby Witt Jr., right? But just in general, I laughed at people who thought they had a great offseason. I thought, oh, they signed a bunch of middling veteran pitchers and some bullpen pieces and whatever. Who'd they get on offense? And they didn't really get anybody on offense, but it didn't matter because they've got a guy who literally, I'm just looking right now. Bobby Witt Jr. right now has 7.7 FWAR, which is tied for the 14th most in a season by any shortstop since 1980. He's tied with Alan Trammell from 1987.
2 months to go.
Yeah, with 2 months to go, he's gonna make a run at the only two shortstops by FWAR have put up 10 WAR seasons. A-Rod in 2002 and Cal Ripken in 1991, and he's gonna make a legit run at both of those. So we could be looking at one of the best shortstop seasons of all time, at least, you know. So there's that. But yeah, the Royals and just in general, I didn't think Seth Lugo would be nearly this good. He's been a spectacular addition. He's ninth in FWAR. What's that?
I don't think the Royals did either.
No, I don't think anybody did. He's number one in innings pitched. He's ninth in WAR. He's third in ERA. He's just been awesome. And then, they have Cole Reagans and Brady Singer who have both taken steps forward this year. Reagans is not quite as elite as he was in half of last year, but he's been just fine. And Michael Wacha has been solid. So they ended up really remaking their rotation. And then, Bobby Witt hit his 20th home run tonight. He's got 24 steals. He's playing elite defense. He's hitting 350 right now.
Oof.
We don't care about batting average anymore, but he's hitting 350. And I was curious. I'm like, damn, in 2024, he's hitting 350. This isn't, 1997 Coors Field. And I looked and, there are plus stats. We talk all the time about WRC plus and OPS plus. That's basically just stats relative to average. But Fangraphs hosts plus stats for everything. So I was like, how much higher than average is this batting average? I looked it up, and it's a batting average plus of 145. So it's 45% higher than than average right now, which would be the second highest since the year 2000. Only DJ LeMahieu in 2020, so it doesn't even count, was better at 150. So yeah, he's just doing monstrous, ridiculous, stupid things, and Mike really put it in perspective. Yeah, I believe they signed him to a 14-year deal. So, yeah,
So long.
You just have to find some wit killers somehow. I don't know how they're going to do it. Wittgenstein. My bad. And you know what? Before I do that, I want to give a mention to Steve Cook, who he's a listener to the show. He wanted to give a good or inside the number, and it's Max Clark, who was off to a pretty damn good start in high A. I just know, look today, he went 2 for 3 tonight with 2 more runs scored. He's now hitting 382 for his first 8 games in West Michigan. So that's pretty nice to see for a guy that people were super bummed about, and he got off to a slow start, but he's really hitting his stride right now. And, Wyatt Langford, still a good young player, but not doing a whole lot these days, right?
He hasn't lit the world on fire. He's his head's above water for sure. But
yeah, he's not as good as Colt Keith this year. We'll say that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so my bad. And this is one that we didn't touch on yet. The Blue Jays. There's somebody we could point our finger at and laugh. They were projected to win 88.2 games this year by PECOTA. We're all upset about the Tigers. The Tigers suck. We were all kind of hoping that things were going to go well, but PECOTA had the Tigers winning 75 games this year. And maybe we should have listened to the projection systems a little bit more. The Blue Jays were projected to win 88, like I said, and they are worse than the Tigers right now. And you go through and look at that roster. You got Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you got Dante Bichette, or Bo Bichette, I'm sorry, George Springer, Dalton Varsho, Alejandro Kirk, the rotation with Kevin Gausman and Jose Barrios and Chris Bassett and Yusei Kikuchi, all that talent, worse than the Tigers. And they had to sell. And, I just to put it in perspective, I guess, losing sucks, being bad sucks, but it really sucks when you're expected to be good and it falls completely off the rails. That's a real 2008 Tigers situation. Oh, there's a good question. Type Cobb says, could Clark become our Bobby Witt Jr.? I don't want to compare. Again, you don't want to. I just said he's having one of the greatest shortstop seasons of all time. I don't think Max Clark. I don't want to put that on him to say he's going to come up and go out there and have a Willie Mays season. But he is that kind of player. I don't think he ever had the power that Witt does. But you're talking about a guy with 4+ tools at a premium position and maybe 1 power that's average. That's a guy that could carry the team if everything works out. So, I like that.
Whether he's Bobby Witt or not, could he be the the leader of a good team. A team that goes to the playoffs. I would say sure. I mean, he's profiling that way.
Yeah, and I've seen Dom Youssef has now asked this a couple times. Could we have gotten Connor Norby for Jack Flaherty? I have no idea. I think that's possible. Who did he go? He went to the Marlins for Trevor Rogers, right?
Rogers,
yeah.
which was as I joked, it's a copy of a copy of a copy of Tarek Skubal. They went and got a left-hander with 2.5 years of team control remaining. He just is not very good. I don't know if given the way that the Orioles operate, I don't think they would have given him up for Flaherty. And I don't necessarily know if the Tigers would have wanted him. I mean, he's a solid player and he's interesting, but I think he is mostly a second baseman, maybe some outfield. So not necessarily who the Tigers need.
I wonder if the other guy would have been more interesting, Stowers.
Yeah, although I saw that he went 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts in his first game.
Well,
these things happen. One more question real quick, and then I'll get back to my list. Who's more valuable, Briseño or Lorenzo? I mean, compare and contrast those two. Neither of them are probably catchers. I think Briseño is less likely to be a catcher in my mind because of this knee injury and because he wasn't ever great back there. They may keep trying. Briseño, I think, is a better pure hitter. He just puts the bat on the ball much better than Lorenzo does, but he has power, but it's more like line drive power. Lorenzo has, I think, like legit plus. He hits everything very, very hard and with loft. I think he's going to hit for more game power. I don't know. I would put them probably right next to each other in the Tigers top 30 list, to be honest. So yeah, that was my bad was the Blue Jays, and my ugly again was Mike Trout, and we've hit it up a ton of times, but like it just it makes you think, like all these great center fielders. It seems like it's just go through them. Ken Griffey Jr. was Mike Trout before Mike Trout.
Yeah.
Mickey Mantle was the original Mike Trout. Now, he drank himself sick, but Andrew Jones, right, was this incredible player, was basically done by the age of 30. Grady Sizemore injured himself out of being perhaps an all-time great. Just makes you appreciate somebody like Willie Mays more, right? That he managed to do it and basically stay good and healthy up until like his final 2 seasons. That's a really demanding position, and it's a real bummer. Like Mike said, it's one of the great what ifs up there with Bo Jackson and Griffey and Eric Davis is always the one that I think about. If that guy could have just stayed healthy, but yeah, it's ugly, and you hope that he can come back and give everybody one more good year, but it just seems like his body is telling him no. It's the opposite of R. Kelly, right?
Yeah.
His mind's telling him yes, and his body's telling him no. And there we go. Wow. So that's it for our segments. I don't know if we've got anything else to talk about tonight. I didn't see any questions. I don't know if anybody has anything else to say. Anything?
Buckle up, y'all. This is we're gonna have to really look for the good the rest of the year, and we're gonna try to keep it maybe a little lighter going forward. I hope, because let me tell you, I haven't been this down the entire year, and it's gonna be tough. But it doesn't mean I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic. I can't even fake it right now. I'm finding it very hard to be optimistic, and that's my whole shtick.
Well, I am hoping that this weekend we get a few good one-liners from Jim Leyland. If nothing else.
Yeah.
For his ceremony, a couple one-liners, make everybody chuckle. That'd be pretty good.
I'll be smokes one up one last time in the dugout. One last time. That's all I want.
Yeah, it'll be nice to see the Skip down there but he's down there a lot actually. But it'll be nice to see him down there getting some credit from the fans. Hopefully fans show up for that. I think they will. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a huge Lions fan, but the Tigers did, I guess, make it until training camp. So you give them credit for that. And then, of course, same for the Packers fans around there who are Tigers fans. Monsters. Right. And I'm sure there's a number of Cleveland Browns fans who are Tigers fans for some reason. I don't know. Mike, did you grow up like a Rams fan or?
Nah, I never really. The Rams were weird in St. Louis. They were pissed when they were left, but like at the same time, a lot of people never really considered it to be St. Louis's team. I was more of a KC fan growing up, so
there you go.
They've always been my AFC team, so I'm good at football. I got the Lions and KC as my teams.
That's funny.
A good spot.
Yeah, I'm thinking. So yeah, I think Christian Okoye was probably before your time. Then he was one of the first Chiefs that I remember. Christian Okoye.
Nigerian Nightmare.
Yeah, and then
I will say I did have a Marshall Falk poster growing up. I
Mhm.
really liked Marshall Falk for the Rams. So
well, I mean, and then the Chiefs had that incredible series of running backs for a few years with like was it Priest Holmes and Larry Johnson and
Joe
Mike-
Delaney.
I don't remember him, but the way that's
Joe Delaney was an excellent back, had a couple of 1,000-yard seasons, died because even though he couldn't swim, he went out into this pond to try to save these two kids who
Oh,
were
God.
drowning, and he died.
jeez.
But he was a hell of a good running back for the Chiefs, and like I'm going to say 1980-ish, 81, somewhere in there.
Oh wow, that's a tragedy. That's
Yeah.
awful. Yeah, bummer.
Well,
Well,
a good story for the night, huh? Why
yeah, there you go. Well, everybody, you know what? If you guys can't swim, you just go ahead, stay safe and dry on land, and you know, thanks for listening to the show. And we'll be back with Raj next, and we'll be you know, doing our minor league show on Monday nights, and back with Raj next Thursday. And you know, as we always say, you know, please like and subscribe to all the stuff we do, and you know, listen, download, all that good stuff because it helps. So and you know, go ahead and buy some shirts if you want. Shirts are nice. Maybe you don't think
Really?
about shirts so much in the summer, but the winter is coming.
That's right.
So there you go. All right. Well, for Yoop, for Mike, for Raj, and Parts Unknown, thanks everybody for listening tonight. And you know, stay classy out there, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, folks.
Good night.